Mhm. Hey, I forwarded you an email from the airport guy that had a slideshow that he gave back in December that has a decent map that shows what the current regulation is. So we can get that. Hold on.
You are right.
Same place I was last time.
Yeah. Still gotta get the agenda.
Thanks for sending that along today, Luke.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to get back to you, but
No, that's fine. Hopefully that was,
yeah, I mean, it sounds from your email, we're already, because we live in the very north part of Timberview. So I think we're probably already in the area that, you know, where they're turning around because they're over
yeah,
their house.
so the thing is like, so the navigation area is a different area, but like you can kind of get an idea of how that kind of goes out from the.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
what the airport operations are. And, you know, the easement thing doesn't really impact what they do or don't do.
Right.
Jason, hello?
Good about yourself.
Yeah.
Denny, I would assume that's probably why you're here as well for the airway.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you know, I actually, so your land, where the dark blue house in that cul-de-sac that backs up to your,
You in the very end of the cul-de-sac or?
no, we're like one of the first ones in the cul-de-sac. It's one of the ones that's done.
Back Timberview Drive.
Yeah, yep, and then into the cul-de-sac, we're right there, so. Kind of neighbors, I guess.
Filling up.
It is, yeah. They just painted one of the other ones in the cul-de-sac. They got two more that I think are supposed to be finished in the next month, probably. So.
Village is going like crazy over there next door too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they've already got what, 6 or 7 that are up or at least in the
I think
process.
Dug 3 there just beyond me the other day.
Yeah, that's wild.
And this is slow. What
That's right.
Crazy.
did we end up, we had 11 permits in
We had 14 by Friday.
for also.
Just for
So
April.
April's picking up a lot, cause I did,
We got,
I didn't have to text you last week, cause I remembered the spreadsheet, so.
we got 13 more this morning.
13 more,
We got
so we're up to 27.
2 4-plexes and a 5-plex. Not
Jeez.
13,
Oh,
but 13.
we're at 13 or 27.
We're at 27.
Okay.
Because right, 8 and 5 is 13.
Yep.
Is that right? So that's what we got today was 2 4-plexes and a 5-plex.
Yeah,
So that's 13 more just today.
well,
But yeah, as of Friday, we were at 14. So we're at
that's a
27.
signal of things getting back on normal. Cause March was.
March was like 11.
February was right on track with what February had done in the past, but March was,
low especially compared to last March. Last March, we had like 56 or something like that.
yeah, that was the outside. If you
That
look
might
at-
be our April.
If you look at my graph of my average last year, that's what made the beginning of last year look so crazy was
Mhm.
60 permits in March.
Yeah,
Hillary Steiger bias.
thank you.
Hey, this is Andrew on the line.
Andrew.
If there was, oh wait, this is recorded, never mind. I'll be joining you from the Mackinac baseball fields here tonight.
close. Like, get in here in the nick of time.
Yes, that is.
Couple
Officially
seconds to spare.
Nick.
Nice. Well, my little town, I used to, get through without. Fairway truck is blocking the intersection at the Casey's and Fairway. There's a few intersections with. Turning
Trafficking.
issues. Why not go big, goes bad, right?
Signs of progress.
That's right. That's why we're here. So we started?
Yeah. More of that.
All right, I called to order April 10th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Hillary, can I get a roll call?
Samuelson. Forrest,
Here.
Grant,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Steiger.
Here.
Reagan.
Fantastic. Commission, did you guys all get the agenda? Can I, any issues or can I get an approval?
Thompson motions.
I'm second.
Awesome. Hillary?
Forrest,
Yes.
Brown,
Yeah.
Thompson.
Yes.
Steiger,
Yes.
Grant.
Yes. Great. Great. Can I get, now at the meetings of March 27th, the regular planning and zoning commission meeting, is there any issues concerning this commission or can I get an approval of the minutes?
Forced motions.
I'm second.
And Hillary, may I get a roll call?
Brown,
Yeah.
Thompson. Steiger,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
Grant.
Yes. No, did I call the order at the, did I put the time in there? 5:45.
I'm second.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah. Yeah,
See,
Yep.
flags.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
No changes.
Fun.
No changes. Sweet.
Still there?
Awesome. Okay, so
Yeah.
welcome, guests, anybody here that would like to make a comment during our open session? So I'm going to move on to number 6, the public hearing and recommendation on a zoning amendment to chapter 175 on airport hazard. Turn it over to Elliot.
I'll kick this one over to you.
Okay,
Somebody
thank
open
you.
the public hearing.
So,
Are we opening it?
yeah, why don't you open the public hearing first and then I'll do my.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I.
You can go ahead.
Hearing for the recommendation on the zoning amendment.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab my. Just- Okay, so this item was requested kind of by the city staff and working with the Des Moines Airport staff related to navigation easements. And so or a noise navigation easement, which essentially just identifies that a piece of property is in a approach zone of the airport that would have additional noises and things in it. And kind of puts that property owner on notice for that and also kind of waives their right to complaint, I guess, about such noise issues over top of the property. We currently have a requirement in that for that in 175C. Elliot, if you could pull up that email I just sent you. Yep, so scroll down to the third map. So the current area in the ordinance covers an area called the 65 DNL, or in the ordinance, it talks about the area of 65 decibels. And so essentially it's the space at the end of the runway where noise reaches a certain level. 65 decibels, one way to think about it. There's fancier math that the airport uses. That's why they call it 65 DNL. So there's like a big calculation for that. So the airport or our airport overlay zone currently only covers that area in yellow. So if any development were to happen in the city of Norwalk in that yellow area, we would require a noise navigation easement. As you can see, that's basically Highway 5, right? So I would not anticipate that we probably will ever have any development in that area in the city of Norwalk. The airport, when we were working on our 2030 or our 2040 comp plan, saw some of our land use plans and contacted me about potentially expanding that navigation easement requirement along the approach zone. Their concern was that as we were a growing community and we potentially see development in that kind of 50th Street and County Line Road quadrant of the community, that we may end up with development and property owners there that maybe don't like having an aircraft fly over top of them. But as you know how an airport's set up, there's not really an option to do that, right? So what they're proposing, if you can drop down to the 5th map there, you can kind of get an idea here. I guess I want to back up real quick. A little more history with the city and the airport. Back in the mid-90s, the city approached the airport when they were doing a runway expansion about the airplane maneuvers out of that southwestern runway. And that agreement ended up with that any airplane would basically go out 2 miles before it made a southern turning movement. That would mean that an airplane wouldn't be flying over top of Lake Colchester, Legacy, and all that stuff. Well, as you can see on this map, there's kind of a yellow line, and there's a note there at the end that says aircraft turn point. So that's how far they have to go out before they can start turning. As you may know, now we have the Timberview, Blooming Heights area out there. And so if you live in that area and you've heard airplanes and stuff, that's probably why, because they fly out to that point before they make a maneuver. And if they were turning south, they would be going directly over some new development that we have in town. So that's just a point of kind of history. Navigation easement discussion really doesn't go out that far. Elliot, if you can jump back to the staff report and to the map on the staff report. So the airport created this map for us to show what the approach zone would be. And it's not labeled the best there, but kind of towards the end of the map around there's a label there that says, 1,108. And then there's a dashed line there, and that is 10,000 feet from the edge of the runway. And so what the airport had requested of the city was that we consider requiring navigation easements in any of the red area that is within 10,000 feet of the end of the runway. So you can see that's kind of like a triangular shaped piece that essentially goes from Highway 5 out to 50th and basically County Line Road south to the lake. So that's the general area that we would add that requirement on. From a city standpoint, had the question asked for me today, like, what's the benefit to the city? What's the benefit to the airport? Obviously, the airport has a lot larger benefit in that they're the ones operating aircraft over that location. They're the ones that are going to field complaints if we do have development in that area. So they do have a very direct benefit by the city requiring this easement. From the city standpoint, it's more of an indirect benefit of making sure that somebody that buys property in that area is aware of what they're buying, right? You might go out there on a quiet Saturday looking at a nice piece of property that has a lot for a house, and you decide that's what I want to buy, and then build a house there, and you're getting aircraft landing over top of you in the future. So that would be where we would require. I would note from a noise perspective, just because we're extending that out, that doesn't necessarily extend out that 65 decibel area. That area of intense noise really is focused on the end of that runway. So I wouldn't anticipate a lot of additional high volume noise outside of that immediate approach zone. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any other questions. And I think we've got some public here that maybe has questions or would like to make some comments too.
So in essence, the request is basically them just wanting to expand that area where whoever builds there, whether it be a developer or a residential, will be notified, because I
Yeah.
assume there's an existing area right now.
Yeah, so if you jump back to that map on page 3 of that other presentation, that yellow area is the only area that we currently
Like you said,
require.
nobody's gonna be
Yep.
building that, but
Yep.
this is just an
Yeah.
extension of that.
Yeah, so this would, extend it down over top of, a pretty sizable development area that actually we've had development interest in today, so,
Would that wouldn't deter any future developer or,
anytime you require something more of a developer, it makes that land a little bit more. They would also have height requirement, that's a separate requirement of that, but the lay of the land there, we don't really have to worry about too much height issues because any height requirement is from the elevation of the runway, so Lakewood and the north side of the lake falls off from the runway in Highway 5. So I think you're like no more than 100 feet above the runway, right? Well, if you're 200 feet down here, then you could technically go to 300 feet.
But we have
So-
industrial. Isn't it industrial by Highway 5?
There is some office industrial land currently zoned that. Though in all of our land use planning, we've identified it as commercial with a couple pockets of residential.
Now I may, should I wait on my questions to you or open it up?
You can
Okay,
either
so-
or.
Do we have, I mean, I look at the Highway 5 and I see that they're coming in over our lake or at least the farmland, well, it used to be horse farms. I think that there still is, but,
Mhm.
and then I look out and we've got all of the Microsoft or whatever from West Des Moines why can't we get the airplanes to go over the ugly metal contraptions and not worry about it?
Geometry. It's where the airplane has to go to land.
I think it has
Right.
to do with wind, like they have to land going into the wind. So
Well, I
it's
get
just-
it, but it's only just turning it just another. If I look at a pie, it's only just going another 30 degrees.
But the runways, I mean,
Yes, but.
the runway is set where it is. They're not gonna come in over top of the thing and then make a quick turn to go into the runway. They're gonna line up that runway 10 miles out and come in on a straight approach. And then on a turning movement, they'll go up and they'll get their altitude and, they'll make a turn sooner, but
So if somebody wants to build there, whether it's commercial or residential, who notifies them about this?
it would be an easement that we would require get recorded with the final plat. So it would be part of any property purchase. Like if you have a drainage easement on your property, you get your packet of information that has all the easements and all the stuff that is party to that property would be included with that. So no one's going to call that person up and say, you're buying property in the approach zone of the airport, but due diligence of someone buying property and reviewing the documents that come with buying property should
So you're
inform
talking
them
like
of
that big thick packet?
Yes.
Like, so I didn't get that till I signed my papers. That seems, I don't know, that maybe it's completely separate, but if I'm going to sign my papers and then get the information on it, how is that seem fair?
I don't know the whole issues with purchasing property from that regard, I guess, like,
Without a law requiring realtors to disclose that, they're not going to because they want to sell property. It's that simple.
Basically, the easement is going to say that the planes are over your property.
yep,
And you can't complain about
and
it.
they're noisy.
And why
Hey,
do they
Luke,
want?
Luke, this is Andrew. Do we have a description of what the current easement is that we can lay over top of this and see just how much we're expanding? That was my question when I saw the paperwork.
Yeah,
What's the difference?
it's a pretty substantial difference. The area right now, Elliot kind of jumped it up there on the screen. In the area that's yellow that says 65 DNL, that is basically just the Highway 5 right of way in Norwalk. And then if you jump back to the other map, this would be expanding from that Highway 5 right of way all the way out to 50th.
So on this map, it ends between like 950 and 1,000.
There's a dashed line after the 1,108.
No, the current.
Oh, the current one, yeah, it would be, yep, yeah, it'd be between 950 and 1,000.
Okay, Luke, my next question for you is, are airplanes currently landing there today, even with the expanded runway, and it seems to be working? So what if we said things seem to be working as they are today, and we'd like to remain the same? Is that a problem for the airport? Is that a problem for us if we continue to go business as usual as we have laid out?
Again, like I said, the benefit to the airport is more direct than it is for the city. You know, for the city standpoint, it would just be, well, that was an easement that was assigned at time of plat, like, sorry, right? The airport's the one that's gonna get direct complaints from people. As far as like, well, it's working fine today. Yes, it is working fine today, but you know, I think we had a conversation with the developer about 120 acres directly in that area today. And that would result in around 600 new dwelling units, which would be around 1,800 people-ish. So, you know, 1,500 to 2,000 people living in that area. The question is, you know, should they know ahead of time? Should we require that they give up their right to complain about that? And the airport has asked that we do that and has stated that's a pretty common thing in most airport approach zones.
What's the result of a complaint? I mean, is it something that falls on deaf ears? Does it go to a legal? I mean, when they call into the airport and the airport handles these, what's the extent of what that, I mean, it's like calling your cable company. I'm not wasting my time regardless, but.
Yeah, I functionally, I don't think they have there's not a lot of room for that complaint, right? You know, I guess somebody could potentially consider a lawsuit on, you know, should the city and should the airport have allowed whatever property that they decide to purchase get built there, right? So should the city have allowed a new residential neighborhood to go in there? Maybe we should have made that whole area like Donna mentioned, like, you know, maybe it should all be just industrial warehouses on the north side of the lake, right? It's not what our land use plan is considered, but you know, there maybe be an argument for that from people being annoyed by the sound of airplanes, certainly.
And they're not considering changing their approach pattern in any way, altering that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much
going out even further or some, I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. It's, you know, we're within 2 miles of the end of the runway, so you're pretty locked into where you're going with a plane at that point, so.
Oh, any other questions? I'd open up the public hearing on the zoning amendment to the airport. If there's anybody that'd like to speak, please just say your name and your address, please. Hi.
Erica Isley, 3086 South Barilla Road. So I'm not on the map, but if I were, I'd be in the red area in the lower left. Yeah, way bottom left. Is where I would be or where I am. So I just maybe look, these might be questions for you, I'm not sure. But because one of the things that you said was that they're not getting louder, or I guess that's what I'm concerned about. Are planes flying lower than, are planes going to fly lower than they do today? Are planes going to be louder than they are today?
I can't answer either one of those. And I mean, so the presence of this easement, I don't think impacts either of those decisions, right? I think would just be an airport operation thing. I don't know that the city has any way to really control if they do that or not. I know right now we have an agreement that requires them to go 2 miles out before they turn south. So if they're going up and they're turning north or west, you know, they can do that as soon as they get to whatever elevation they need to. So, you know.
Can I add to Erica's question?
Yeah.
With the new with the new expansion of the airport,
Mhm.
maybe it's not as, the question is not lower or louder, but how much more traffic are they expecting to come through?
Again, I would expect
So they
there
may
to
wanna
be more
maybe-
traffic based on the fact that we're doing an airport.
Is that gonna be
terminal
their main
expansion.
runway?
I don't have the
They
answer
two
to that.
main roads, and it does depend on the wind. So wherever the wind is, they're gonna try and land most into it. Makes sense?
They didn't want to give up any of this information. They just came to us and said, bam.
I
My
guess,
Next question was going to be, we know what this side looks like, that's in the Norwalk path.
Mhm.
What does the Des Moines side look like? Like, could we compare what Des Moines is getting versus what Norwalk is getting in terms of easement? Is it fair, I
Yeah.
guess?
I don't know that, because the Des Moines area is already developed, I don't know that they're asking that of. They're asking us of that because we have undeveloped ground, and it's easiest to add a requirement to someone because there's essentially 3 property owners that are impacted by this, maybe 4. Right? Whereas if you look to the northeast of the airport, the opposite runway of this, that's over southern Des Moines, which is probably thousands of property owners, right? So the airport could go by individual easement rights from each one of those property owners. But, that's a bigger thing to do than to come to a city and say, hey, fellow government agency, would you require this of future development in your city?
My next question is, you talk about future landowners. What, if any, notification would go to existing property owners? And how far, if there is notification, like where would the demarcation be on this map of who gets notified?
So I don't believe, since it's just a code change to the district, I don't think anyone would be individually notified. Again, it kind of, if you look on that map that you have there, right
Wouldn't they have
outside.
to agree? Wouldn't existing property owners have to agree to this?
They're not giving the easement right now. When someone would develop their property, the city would require they grant that easement at the time of development.
What about if she goes to sell her property? Does she have to notify the next people? Like,
She doesn't have to because it's not impacting her property,
but she said she's in the red.
but it stops before it gets to her property.
I'm just saying, take me out of it. That's where I live, but I think any property owner in the red would want to know what's going on with this, how this impacts them.
But to your point, if that's something if you are in that and you are going to resell, do you lose property value now that you have to disclose that when before that wasn't an issue?
So again, no one that has a property that they own right now that they're not going to develop will be required to have an easement. The city's easement requirement is when development happens. So you have right now, there's 4 big property owners out there. There's the Stark property, which covers the majority of this. There's property owned by LLC called Linden Lane Corporation. There is property owned by 2 folks with the last name Barkley. And then there is a little bit of the North Shore development owned by road contractors. Okay. And then there's a little sliver of it on the west side of 50th, but we won't worry about that one for now. So these development properties, these big farms that we anticipate, again, we had a conversation today with a developer that wants to buy it and subdivide it into townhomes and single family homes and stuff. At that point in time, we would require that developer assign easements to those properties, right? So on the west side, there's like a house on the west side, right? It's an existing house. It can sell to people back and forth. It never has to come to the city to ask to be subdivided. It's never going to develop. So we don't require that of them because that requirement for easement comes into at the time of development.
Okay.
So
So
that
it's a
tracking?
grandfathered clause, basically. You're okay because you're grandfathered before, before.
essentially, yeah.
That's not the right wording, but yes.
Yeah, but now if you had a house on 5 acres and then you decided to sell it and move out and then somebody bought it and wanted to split it off into 5 1-acre lots and sell. Now that's a development. Now that person would be required to assign those easements at the time of platting, right? So, and then just again to the area that's covered by that, it really doesn't show up well on the screen. There is a dashed line right out on 50th. I don't know, Elliot, if you can color that in or something, but that is the farthest extent that it would go. So I'm not even sure there's a house, maybe a house on the north end of 50th up there that's inside that, but
Maybe.
yeah. So there's maybe a couple houses there, but most of it is undeveloped ground. So again, somebody's, in theory, like their individual house property shouldn't be, value should be affected by this because they don't have that easement requirement.
Okay, I think I just have one other question. Because you've been talking about, you met with developers and talked about this, and my first thought was the North Shore. Well, other than our planes getting louder or lower, the North Shore, we want a hotel there, we want a restaurant there, we want retail there. How are those potential investors in Norwalk gonna feel about this? Because I read here that construction standards to achieve this degree of sound attenuation are provided in the city of Norwalk building code. So I don't know what that is to.
Yep. So-
soundproofing to achieve a noise level reduction of 25 dBA.
Yep. So that requirement still only exists over that yellow 65 dBA area. So on that other map that Elliot showed, when we wrote that.
Not this, no, okay, not the other yellow, not this yellow.
Yeah, no, sorry, there's too many yellows.
Not this yellow. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. So the additional building standards to reduce noise reduction would be over that 65 decibel area. It's in originally in the original language, it was all the same. The easement and the construction standards were required in the same area. But then we didn't want to have an additional construction requirement on areas that didn't have the high noise level that kind of yellow DNL area has. So.
that's all.
So Luke, this is Andrew. One more question. So I think what I'm hearing from you is we don't get any say on landing or takeoff patterns other than the one that we have today, which is you have to go out 2 miles before you turn.
Correct.
And we have no say over elevation of airplanes as they approach or take off. All this is doing is saying, prepare, developers, prepare your land, prepare your developments and build accordingly to soundproof accordingly, because this is going to happen because of where we are in proximity to the airport. And so if developers and builders build with those right codes in place, then at least inside your dwelling, you should be it shouldn't notice as much.
Yeah, and so that's not, it's really more just the easement language. It's not really even construction standards. Because again, the construction standards are limited to that area right off the end of the runway that doesn't really have much of Norwalk in it anyway. It's just a function of the way I had to write the ordinance. I had to rewrite both sections because they all were one in the past, and then I had to split them out.
Andrew, I think the construction standards would only be effective within inside that 65 dBL
Yep,
area, which it's hard to imagine anything being built. I
correct.
mean, they may want to build a hotel over Highway 5.
Now, I mean, I guess a question or something you all might,
Yeah, it's right over.
we could extend that, and actually the airport's original recommendation was that we include that construction standard over the bigger area. And when they came and presented to council to even, before we even came to the whole process, they presented to council saying, hey, we would like you as a city to consider this change. So that's what those other maps are from that presentation. And if you went back and looked at that presentation, their recommended language is to require it to be
Do
extended.
you like the recommendation? for the city?
I think it's reasonable. I don't think that the easement language is gonna hinder development too much. I think higher construction standards probably would. I mean, it would put a premium on building those things. Even if that was a 2 to 3% markup, that's more of an expense. So I don't think it's really gonna hinder what people want to build in there.
I don't see many drawbacks to having the easement personally. I know we can't control what's, I guess, what Elizabeth said and what you said, Elliot, like we can't control how that's disclosed, but at least it's a chance to say, oh, by the way, planes fly over your place with regularity.
And if that's all it is,
And it's gonna happen no matter what. Like, so it's just an opportunity at least to have that be disclosed.
Yeah.
Which I think I would appreciate if I were somebody that was like, hey, maybe I should, I mean, it should be a logical thing, like, where I'm like, oh, wait a minute, the airport's right there, let me think about this, but it's good.
It's like a gigantic stormwater flow easement.
Yeah.
If you go to a property and you see a little dip in your yard that runs along everybody's backyard, it doesn't take real long to figure out, oh, and it's torrential downpour, that's gonna be a river.
Yeah.
And that should be in your packet of information when you buy property, so that you know that it's supposed to function. Right? It's the same thing, live near the airport.
To Elizabeth's point though, and I apologize, I don't have an answer for you, but I think it's a fair point of you don't see that until you're buying the property. So I don't know, is that a valid reason to back out of the sale of a property of like, oh, hey, I didn't realize this easement was here. I didn't realize I was buying property in this area. Can I now walk away from that at that point, I mean, you're right, like you're signing. I mean, who really reads through all that stuff, right? Well, I do 'cause I'm a dork, but like, you're there, you're excited, you're buying your new house and you're signing paperwork, right?
Appreciate
So,
the easement, like Jason had said. My comment would be, I guess if you're gonna, a lot of this growth is right there by Highway 5, and if you're gonna build up there, you're probably gonna hear Highway 5 more than you're gonna hear Airport. Well, you will, believe me. I mean, I hear the helicopter goes over my house for first aid every day, so gets the dog going. Oh, sorry, sure.
Eric Isley again. So, could we get an example of what the easement would read?
I don't know if he has sent me one yet, but that is something certainly we could get before we went to council. I'm guessing we would probably,
That may allay all these questions for a half hour at the council meeting. I don't know, or maybe.
oh, that's fair.
I mean, if really what the heart of it is just saying, hey, what they're requesting is that we add in this so that there isn't notice, then I think it's a no-brainer, as long as we're not opening ourselves up to, again, additional noise. Again, the volume of planes is gonna change as the airport grows, get that, but as long as we're not opening ourselves up to more noise, more nuisances, that's not what this is going to do. And it's not, Luke, you said it's not gonna detract from the attraction of developers to the area.
Yeah.
Then. Yeah.
I mean, with the addition, I don't know enough about the addition to the airport, but will it allow larger airplanes to land and take off? Will that change the noise? That,
I would anticipate just. I think I mentioned this to you earlier, Carson, when you emailed me. Des Moines growing, we're adding onto the airport. I would only expect that Des Moines will continue to grow, and in the years coming, there will be additional expansions on the airport,
You can
and
already
additional
land-
runways,
You
and
can already
additional
land
things.
767,
So,
which are now anymore. I mean, the largest planes are only 2-engine planes. There's no more 4-engine 747. So, yeah, I mean, it could only get up to a 777 would be the next biggest. So it wouldn't be a lot more airplane that would be landing there than what they're currently able to handle.
You moonlight as a pilot?
yeah, Jason, you know a lot here.
There's an ant, when we lived out in LA, our sons got really,
Into it.
we were in the path of LAX.
As you say,
I
you
mean,
get
they
a lot
were
of.
way high,
lot of
but
intel.
oh my gosh. So it's a longer story.
I'd like to think we're a little bit more used to it with till the F-16s left, but that was a daily thing that I miss it actually. Anyone else?
This is Andrew. I have one more comment. I personally feel like it's I would be in favor of not only putting the easement, but also putting the construction standard in that area. That way we're doing, I think, all we can as a city to set up any developer for success, and anyone who is at the end of the phone line in Norwalk or the airport for success for whatever's built there. And if that 3% deters someone from putting in residential and instead motivates them to go with industrial or commercial, I don't know. That's just my thought. It sounds to me like it would be a better approach, but I'd probably need some more information, more data before I made that a firm recommendation.
Dennis Isley, 2986 South Arilla Road. I just think you're putting some easements on property which people don't know about at the moment. I think a lot more people needed to be notified. I'm not affected by this. I'm just out beyond it a ways. And also you're taking away their right to sue if the noise would happen to change and get louder yet. You're taking those rights away from somebody. You're putting an easement on somebody else's property. And they don't even know about it now.
As I understand, right, they will.
If they sell it,
Only if
No,
they're,
no, if there's,
If they develop,
they
only
build.
if they sell it.
if they develop.
Yeah, so this will not put an easement on any property. So if this gets approved at council, there's no easement in
And
place.
there's no benefit to the city whatsoever.
Again, I don't think
Outside of-
there's not a direct benefit. I do think there's a,
To the developer, there may be with the house.
well, I think there's an indirect benefit to the city of knowing that our future residents that buy in that area at least have been made aware of the situation. Right? That's the benefit that I see in it for the city is, it's no different to me than when we require, like Elliot mentioned, a drainage easement in someone's backyard. It's putting a property on notice of a condition of their property that they have to accept, right? So if you have a drainage easement on your property, that tells you that things are draining from here to down over here, and you have to accept that, right?
They say they come up with a new plane that's really noisy for some reason, which I doubt that.
Yeah.
Possibility. It's really noisy. You complain to the city of Norwalk and they don't do anything.
Dennis, I'm guessing there are certain decibel levels that they're not allowed to operate over.
Yeah, I would guess that.
I don't know that for a fact.
But Des Moines gonna say, well, Norwalk said relieve this of liability. Yeah, I don't even think that should be in there myself. But if there's a certain decibel level, that should be.
Hey, Luke, is it possible to bring somebody from the airport to one of our future meetings to talk through this a little bit more? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, if you would like, and I guess I apologize, in my mind, this seemed like a pretty straightforward thing. So I'm certain that Clint, who I've worked with at the airport, would be happy to be involved with any discussions. So if you want to table that to have him come back, there's no rush to get this done. I mean, I've been talking with them since summer of last year, and I waited 6 weeks to get that map there because their engineering department had to create it for us. And, we would like to get something in place prior to a development happening. So,
I just
we've
think
got time. It's not an imminent thing.
you should notify the property owners that are affected before you go any farther.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay with tabling it if we can get somebody, if it sounds like Clint from the airport, and then
Sure.
we're not asking you all the questions, Luke, that we could ask Clint
I
directly.
honestly thought I would have a lot of good answers for you. You kept stumping me, so.
Okay, at this
That's-
moment, I am gonna close the public hearing. If anyone else want to speak anybody else online?
Not related to
Okay.
this. item.
Then at 6 25, I will close the public hearing for the zoning amendment and allow the commission here to discuss anything else that we want on this.
I'm leaning towards what Andrew is saying about having an airport person come and speak to us.
I kind of agree on the sense that it's such a big upcoming growth area if North Shore ever does get developed.
I will reach out to him and we'll get him here on the 24th.
So I'm gonna make
So-
let's table the public hearing and recommendation of the zoning amendment for the airport hazard height and noise until we can get a airport speaker out here to give us more answers and
Okay.
questions. Can I get a motion?
Thompson motions.
Or
Steiger second.
Great. Roll call.
Force B, yeah. Brown,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Steiger,
Yes.
Force,
Yes.
Grant.
Yes. Great. Thank you. I'm gonna open at 7:26 or 6:26, a recommendation on a variance request from the Fairway Stores to the installation of 10-foot chain link slat fence at the new store location at the HH Norwalk planned unit development. And Mr. Elliott?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one. So this is a report that's gonna be going to
Yeah,
board of
it's-
adjustment
yes.
next week. And typically, we ask for P and Z recommendation on board of adjustment items. So that's why this is coming in. I think we mentioned this at our last meeting that this was gonna be happening. Part of their site plan approval, which did go through at council, by the way, included a barrier that is proposed around their generator and refrigeration units. And so it's gonna be in the northeast corner of the property. To be specific, so let's see if I can zoom in far enough. You can see up here, we've got refrigeration rack, generator, and then this line with the boxes in it that is call out O is the approximate location of where that barricade is, or that barrier is gonna be. In this case, they're proposing a chain link fence with plastic slats. And the way that our zoning ordinance is written for fences, there's two things to consider. One, the maximum fence height on a property that isn't in an industrial district is 6 feet. In industrial, you can go up to 8. There are a few exceptions for things like basketball courts, tennis courts, etc., but they're very specific to recreational uses. And then the second thing is material type. So one of the things in the prohibited fence material sections, I just noticed an error in my report. I need to add a header that says prohibited materials. But one of those things is that chain link or woven wire type fences shall not include plastic or wood slats or strips, bamboo reed, etc.
That's just like what's interwoven in between the links to.
Yeah, it's
privacy.
real thin,
Yeah.
almost like I don't know, like a really long chocolate bar shaped thing in terms of width and depth that just goes between the chain links. My understanding is that the applicants are proposing that particular fence style to do two things. One, to have screening, but also have some ventilation so that the refrigeration condensers perform better. And they can say a little bit more about that after we're done talking, but those are the two variants things they're asking for. So fence height and then also fence material. I think from a staff perspective, we completely understand the height thing. That makes a lot of sense. We want mechanical screening with things like this. Sometimes those units are underground or on a roof. In this case, they're proposing them to be outside. I think we would be a little bit more able to find a nexus for approval if it were something more like a wooden privacy fence, maybe a shadow box or an actual masonry wall. I'm not an expert in the thermodynamics of refrigeration racks, so as far as their performance in letting off heat, condensation, etc., and the type of barricade required, like I said, not an expert on that, but we're taking this through the Board of Adjustment with the recommendation to allow for that height, but it would be preferable to have a different material fence slash barricade. I think that's about all that we have from the staff side, unless Luke, if I've left anything out. I think that was pretty much it.
It's a,
One thing that we did want to note for just geometry, so they're proposing that fence to come right off the exterior wall line of the building. So it would be, I imagine it would be shorter than the building, but even plane with the wall on the eastern side. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions, or we have Adam Shepner with Millis Associates, who's been the site engineer for the project on the call.
Yes. Is there anyone in the public online or anything that would like to make a comment or two? Please state your name or an address.
Yeah, hi, Adam Shepner here with Millis Associates. We're the consultant for Fairway on this project. Thanks, Elliot, for the introduction there, but the refrigeration rack runs, I believe all of the coolers within the store, and the height exceeds the 6-foot limit that the city currently has with their fence ordinance. As Elliot mentioned, they would like to do the chain link around it to allow for ventilation. They've done vinyl fences in the past, and they've had issues lately with wind and damage and those panels breaking. And the vinyl itself doesn't allow the proper airflow that they're looking for these units. So that's why we're here with the request tonight, to ask for the chain link with the slats in it to provide a little bit of screening to keep unwanted visitors from trying to wander within the fence and check out what's in there. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
I have a question. So as I understand it, Fairway is changing this store to be one of their flagships, like, or one of their new designed stores. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. This store will be consistent with many of the newer stores that you'll see around the metro.
Okay, so I just wonder why, if they're going to all of this to make this new concept store and to make it one of their nicer ones, then why do they want a chain link fence? Because to me, I drive by, I think I'm gonna see it even from my building across the street, directly across the street, or when you drive by, you're gonna see a chain link fence. I guess I don't see any berms or anything landscaping that would help cover that. But whether or not, I just think you're gonna be putting in this nice store and then you want a chain link fence.
There is a line of shrubs along the northern section of this fence, and there is just to the west, there are some trees kind of out in front of the dumpster enclosure that are there that should screen the face of this from the highway. But this is consistent with what they have done on some of their other newer stores, I guess.
I thought I read in there you were gonna put in a picture of the thing, or,
Well, I've been in contact with Matt, who's the project engineer, or the internal engineer with Fairway, and he was gonna try to get me some examples. He did send me one that I just did omitted at the time. See if I can find the exact. So that's.
And chain link is approved, right? It's just the slats.
Yep.
I mean, in this regard, I like the slats better than just a regular chain personally.
right? I just kept picturing yellow. And,
Yeah.
the old style, so.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
For chain link
Me besides my wife. So
and moving.
And your children.
it was,
I'm glad this is recorded forever, Jason.
yeah, you know, after seeing the pictures, some of my concerns go away unless you guys are still concerned.
I have no concerns.
I have no feelings on the matter. Referee in the process.
My concern would be then, are we opening up a issue with other companies coming in and saying, you let this go through?
With the variance process is inherently related to
Yeah.
site-specific things, so you're not beholden to previous decisions when you do variances, so not necessarily, though you do tend to want to be consistent, so.
We feel the refrigeration and the airflow is
Yeah.
productive enough to
Yep.
get this through. Okay. Then I am fine with the look of
Yeah,
this.
my initial concerns were exactly like yours. Why not just do something nice with wood?
Yeah.
Like what? Why not that?
Should have put this picture on the staff.
But
Specifically, you know, if it was just for this, just for the dumpsters, I say, yeah, you gotta do wood or, but if it really is integral to the operation of
yeah,
a very important component, then
For trash disposal, we entertain no
Yeah.
exceptions to that. I won't take that through. Something like this, I don't know, it's kind of in a weird zone of administration.
Well, then on that note, I will close the discussion on the variance request at 6:37 and allow any more comments from the commission. Then may I get a motion for the recommendation on a variance request from Fairway Stores to allow the installation of a 10-foot chain link slat fence at their new store location in Norwalk.
Brown motion.
Steiger second.
Fantastic. Hillary?
Thompson.
Aye.
Steiger,
Yes.
Forst,
yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Grant.
Yes. Fantastic. Now I will move on.
Yeah. we'll see
Thank
Elizabeth.
I will move on to city council. David?
I think he is out of town.
City is dead. No, I'm just. Economic development update. Holly?
No.
Fantastic. Moving and grooving. Luke?
Got a lot of commercial development that we're working through right now in the Norwalk Central area, so. Working through some site plans for a retail building and a hotel and. Obviously the Fairway site plan, getting that through council last week. And I guess the next thing with that will be I don't know if we've called determined the plat name yet, but the Hughes Drive extension to the north. Will be a separate plat that will come forward here shortly.
It's gonna seem repetitive. It's just the way that this has been done, it's a little bit out.
We're finally getting, you know, with the whole Norwalk Central HH Norwalk area, we've. Had so many pieces moving around that things kind of got out of order just by necessity of. Making sure things could happen, and so we're going through the growing pains of. Finally getting things all back in the right order of process.
Kind of like when we had Hughes Century Crossing Plat 4, which was literally just a piece of Hughes Drive
Yep.
behind the Gordon retail building. It's gonna be kind of something like that.
So we'll get that through, and then future plans and site plans should all be on their own lot without any wonkiness. Fingers crossed.
You
So
did have an oil change business, a quick lube looking to locate here. They've since canceled their project.
Oh,
So
that's good to know.
How about, the. Was it supposed to be used auto right there by the. Like a used auto dealership?
yeah, just right out
Starting to
here.
look really nice where they're putting the brick and the new windows.
Yeah, so Tony, our building official, has been a little bit more plugged into that. I know that the guy who owns those buildings came in and got.
Yeah, they had a meeting to talk about the remodel process and what codes he'd have to follow, and so kind of walked him through. What things, I think, you know, he's looking at changing the bathroom. Well, when you change a bathroom now, you open up to new plumbing code, right? And that's a whole building, so. I think a lot of the work he's doing is primarily exterior stuff, which is fine. Use wise though, I mean, they kind of bounced around on exactly what they're doing. I think they're really just spiffing up the building for now.
Wants to
Then,
rent it out is my
yeah, gonna
understanding.
put it up for rent
Yeah.
and see.
Didn't at some point, I thought we approved it for a used
We
car,
did.
like a
Yep.
small.
Yep, the owner originally wanted to do a used car dealership there, so we added that as a use and
We rezoned it to C.
do we, okay,
Yeah.
so it's C3 now. I think they finally realized the amount of paving they'd have to do with that, how just odd that would look to try to have a car dealership there, so. But yeah, it certainly is looking better than it did,
Mhm.
so. Kudos to them. That's all I got.
Anything else, Elliot?
No, no, we got nothing else.
May I ask Beardsley,
Mhm.
it's being shut down at a period of time?
Okay.
No, is it?
Oh, is it? I'll have to get with Wayne. I can have Wayne reach out to you, get you the whole schedule of things. I'll probably mess it up, but
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what the game plan is there. 'Cause,
Three
you
of
know,
us.
People here, I'm on P and Z and they think,
Well, someone was talking, my partner was talking to, is it LK or who's doing, they're like, oh yeah, you've got a 2 months, it's gonna be shut down for 2 months on both sides. I haven't heard that.
I don't know the full details. I know that, you know, they're going to try to phase things to keep access for people where they can, but at some point they do have to shut pieces of it down just because they're rebuilding the whole thing. So I don't know when those will be, but I will get with Wayne and have them give me an update and I'll pass it on to the commission.
Thank you. And then I'm gonna move on to number 11. Our next meeting date is April 24th, 5:45. And then number 12, may I get a motion to adjourn?
Forced motions.
round second,
Thank you. Let's say,
it's aye.
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 Aye, 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 aye.
Excellent.
You,
Thank you. You know, it's so funny is we get the